it that no matter what comes out of Toyota, it is almost always loved? It's like Halo 3 ODST. It's like initially it was received okay, but didn't really start getting the love that it deserved until like 3 to 5 years later, where people started to respect the storyline that they gave to the small initial DLC, which by the way, if you're a video game person, Halo 3 ODST is the best game of all time. Halo ODST still has some of the greatest environmental music ever, and I don't care what you say. Toyota though, they do the same thing. There's very few times that they miss the mark, even if people don't really see it initially. There was a car that came from Toyota that was very much that same exact story. I'm Alex at F9 Instagram, and today's episode, we're taking a look at the birth, the flight, and the ultimate death of the beautiful little middle engine beauty. All right, we're talking about what exactly happened to the Toyota MR2. Welcome to Fitment Industries. No, not Figment, not Fitness, not Fitbit, Fitment. All right, the models struggle bust the hell out of that at SEMA yet again. But if you're looking for wheels, tires, suspension, or maybe even a performance part or two, be sure to check us out over at fitmentindustries.com. And if you haven't yet, don't forget to subscribe so we can keep making banging videos like this, okay? And with that now out of the way, be sure to check out the website because we've got so much going on right now. It would mean the world to us if you could take a look at it. But let's talk about this crazy little tiny car, okay? Oh, and before I forget, drop a comment, let us know what you'd like to see us talk about next, because that's what we keep building episodes on for y'all. I literally sit there, I read the comments, and I also see the guy that's still talking about the W8. It was the mid-70s, okay? The oil crisis of the 70s were causing people to take all sorts of like unauthorized medication in fields, and Volkswagen buses were just bussing. They're the coolest things in the world, okay? But inside that same time frame was a small company that goes by the name of Toyota. Now, Toyota had established a goal of building a car that would be great to drive, affordable, and get good gas mileage, okay? Something that harbored the feelings of a sports car without actually being one. The primary intention was to not actually be a sports car, okay? But once the crisis began to subside and oil began doing oil things again, and Toyota began to build the car to what they wanted it to be, starting with the basics of just where the motor should be. That's where they started. The eventual MR2 would have a mid-engine, transversely placed design, with everything else built around that fundamental, key, crucial thing that makes the MR2 so very special, okay? You're gonna wanna come close, because I'm about to blow your mind. The MR2 was not designed by Lotus and assembled in Toyota, okay? Get that out of your noggin. It didn't happen, it's fake news, okay? However, Roger Becker of Lotus did assist in the suspension development of the car, where that rumor was initially sourced from. But Toyota does get the majority ownership of these trophies when it comes to the MR2. Same with copying GM. I'm not sure where the GM rumor came from, but that's also not true. We're just trying to problem solve. They're trying to problem solve the same problem at the same time, okay? Again though, what made this special for Toyota and what Yoshida were focusing on was the fact that this was going to be a fun commuter car, not a straight line speed sports car. They didn't want it to have that connotation to it. And while Toyota was strong in the reliability and cost-conscious style building process, the assistance from Toyota on suspension and performance assisted in rounding out the car for its initial unveiling in the 80s. And there was some good ass testing that was going into this car. Dan Gurney's name was literally all over it. And if you're a fan of the 80s cars, you know who that is. And the prototype would actually spend quite a bit of time at Willow Springs here in the States for development, so they could really refine the feeling of the MR2. And when the MR2 launched, it launched with a ton of love. It could keep up with the competition that it didn't really ever talk about. It looked sharp. It came in a funky platform design that garnered plenty of attention and could hold its own even against the most conventional construction design. Like, people knew it was different, but it wasn't different enough to put people off. And when Toyota started to add superchargers, that's when things really started to get wild. I mean, in 1988, Toyota would introduce the MR2 with a supercharged model, which was a lower compression, a little bit heavier, a little chunkier, but more powerful MR2 that put it at the top of its model class and started to egg on some of the biggest and greatest of the time. Even the likes of Ferrari were looking at this little tiny Toyota, okay? The 4A GZE was a good foundation, and what was actually what allowed people like you and people like me to make 700 horsepower Widowmakers out of this tiny little car. And needless to say that the 80s were like good for Toyota, but the 90s were great for Toyota, okay? So much so that even with Toyota's meticulous part changeover during the first generation of this car's entire thing, Toyota would eventually just introduce another MR2, the second generation that most of us know and love. If you guys know of the first generation, please don't be mad. There's tons of things that they did to it, but the second generation, it was beautiful, okay? Ferrari, like if you wanted a Ferrari, but you couldn't afford a Ferrari, you bought a second gen MR2. It was sexier, okay? It was smarter, okay? And it had some body redesign that finally gave all the little changes they did in the first gen some visualization. It was the car you didn't know you needed. The second generation would come out with beautiful sloped lines, supercharged goodness. The 3S GTE, sound familiar? It would come with 200 horsepower, 200 foot-pounds of torque, a manual transmission, a 6-second 0 to 60, and a 14-second quarter mile in the 90s, and that was just the beginning. Racing production companies started coming out of the woodwork and making things for these cars that truly changed the game for the modification community. They came out at a great time, and I mean, people were loving what was coming from these cars in the 90s. It was good. It's good to have a little love. The MR2 would get love from Tom's, a specialty performance group. It would get love from TRD. It would go on to set like land speed records in 1992 and remain undefeated in its class. And I mean, the modifications of this car locked the BGT record, and as of July 2015, it still hadn't been beaten by any 2-liter production turbocharged GT car. The car flourished. It was awesome. It blossomed. It was beautiful. It was the gal or guy that found themselves after leaving their hometown city only to come back looking like an actor from a Hallmark movie. You're just confused, you're happy, but you're slightly jealous that you didn't maybe find one earlier. The third generation, though, was probably not as cool as the SW20, even though it had damn near perfect balance. But for some reason, even though Toyota was known for creating some damn good cars, the MR2 and the Celica were canceled by the gigantic company because Toyota blew up. So why? Why did you take that away from us, okay? Listen, I want to talk about the third gen more, but Steve is gonna yell at me because they're kind of weird to look at. Just swap out the motor with the Celica GT and you pretty much get a third gen MR2 in what it should have actually been. It needed more power. So where, just why, and just what happened to the Toyota MR2? And why did Toyota return with a new mistress for the Supra in the past few years and with another name like Subaru behind it? Like they're coming out with these cars, but none of them are theirs. And why is the MR2 just collecting dust? One thing has to be clear. The aftermarket scene of the MR2 is likely one of the founding reasons literally any other car also got aftermarket support. HKS, Blitz, Phoenix Power, the SW20 found in the second gen would commonly start cranking out 500 wheel horsepower with love from companies like these. Phoenix Power, I mean, they were just monumental at the time, and it didn't matter that it had like a wicked oversteer snap and it wanted to kill you. It was still getting modified to infinity and beyond. That's the cheesy thing I got for today. The Toyota MR2 isn't with us much anymore for a few reasons, but it actually started well before the increased competition space, which is what a lot of people think is the reason as to why it died. The first one would be that MR2 initially filled a hole. It was a fun A to B cruiser that could be enjoyed and driven enthusiastically. And throughout the early 80s and into the 90s, it did exactly that. It accomplished the goal. And as the 90s came through, there was no shortage of competition Japanese sports cars, which initially pushed the MR2 in a slightly different space as people were starting to compare the MR2 to not an entry-level sports car, but now a fully baked 3000 GT VR4. And it just didn't work. Even though Toyota didn't want it to be associated with it, that's how the consumers took it. And while the MR2 survived, it knew its days were numbered as just being a fun sports car. That was a commuter. It had to make a shift, and that shift was not one that many enthusiasts enjoyed, and that was essentially what birthed that third gen MR2. And that's the Spider layout. And that was the reduction in power. Now it's still a fantastic car, but it wasn't what people were expecting. The SW20 was incredible, but you had to make it further incredible to scale with its competition if you wanted the MR2 to survive. So while the others lay dead at Y2K, like the 3000 GT, the MR2 had to try to find a new market. And while it survived for a few more years, there's not much out there for it to stay alive as you go past the early 2000s because people just didn't see it as a fantastic swap. And while I don't speak bad on the third gen, it was lighter, it was simpler, it was cleaner, it was still a properly fun driver's car that got some love by some modification communities. It was good. However, the interest in this car specifically and those like it really began to fade. And some consider this due to the market pulling away from the sports car market, but some would also argue that this has a lot to do with Toyota electing to give it a shorter lifespan with its limited models, trim options, and simplified production schedule. I mean, when you look at it, there wasn't as much to it. Toyota, instead of involving it, simplified it. That simplification paired with like us in the US handling a global recession made us not really think that the beautiful big-eyed baby maker, you know, MRS was totally worth it. And after all, most people just realized that their house was like 66% worth what it was supposed to be because people were borrowing money that they weren't supposed to in houses that were too big. What the MR2 did that not other marques did was that it was genuinely focused on a platform that its intention was to be an A to B fun daily driver, not just a huge sports car. It was made by a company that at the time began to truly embody and lead the charge of organized lean operations in their production facilities. The reason Toyota's huge is because of their manufacturing, okay? And if there was one company that knew exactly what they were making and its likely shelf life, it was Toyota. And while I will always miss the MR2 and the red and yellow one that used to fly around Eau Claire when I was 18 that would whoop absolutely everyone's ass on Claremont, I will patiently wait for Toyota to take some of like maybe their Camry sales that they've got going on recently and reintroduce an MR2 for people like us that weren't old enough to buy one with a good spec, but we're now too old and want to jump back into the platform. We need a new one. That's me. I'm people. But what do you think about the MR2 and what's your favorite generation? Let us know below, and if you're looking for aftermarket wheels, tires, or suspension, or wheel and tire packages, be sure to check us out over at fitmentindustries.com. Don't forget, we do have quick delivery on certain stuff, so you can get it in as little as 7 days. I'm Alex from Fitment Industries, and I'm just saying, there was a red, if you guys are still here, there was a red and a yellow one in Eau Claire that were like 650 wheel horsepower. There was a white Supra that was 600 wheel horsepower. And I remember on 3-lane Claremont, both MR2s made that Supra, Mark IV Supra, looks like it was going backwards because those cars were so fast. That's all I got. All right, we'll see you later. Peace.